They say secrets are currency in times of fear. That what you whisper in confidence can be traded for safety when fear demands sacrifice. That trust given freely can be sold for the price of survival. And I learned this truth when I was 21 and foolish enough to believe that love between women was a bond stronger than self-preservation. That the girl who held me in the dark and promised forever would keep my secrets, even when keeping them became dangerous. But she did not keep them. She sold them, sold me, spoke my name to men who collected names the way others collect debts. And by the time I understood what she had done, the court had already summoned me, had already written my name in their ledgers, had already decided I was guilty of crimes I had admitted only to her. And I have spent every moment since carrying the knowledge that the person I loved most was the person who destroyed me most completely. And this knowledge has shaped everything that followed, has made me someone who trusts no one, who keeps all secrets locked behind teeth that will not open even under torture, who understands that love is not armor, but the softest place to strike. My name is Marjorie, and I was a hedge witch who practiced the old ways in secret, who healed when I could and harmed never, because I understood that power used carelessly becomes a chain. And I lived in a port town where ships brought goods from distant lands and rumors traveled faster than truth, where suspicion was as common as salt air, and witch trials had become entertainment for those with nothing better to occupy their cruelty. And I was careful, so careful, never gathered herbs where I might be seen, never spoke the words of power aloud where ears might hear, never did anything that would mark me as different or dangerous or worth noticing. And this caution had kept me safe for 6 years, had allowed me to live quietly, to help where I was able, to practice what my grandmother had taught me without drawing attention that could get me killed. I met a leaner in the market on a day when autumn was turning to winter, and the air tasted of coming snow, and she was new to the town, had arrived on a merchant ship from London, and she was beautiful in a way that made people stare. Beautiful and alone, and carrying herself with a wariness that suggested she had reasons to be careful. And I watched her navigate the market stalls, watched her flinch when men spoke to her, watched her count coins as if each one mattered desperately. And I recognized in her something I understood, which was the particular vulnerability of women without protection, without family, without the safety that comes from belonging somewhere. And I approached her without thinking, offered to show her where the cheaper bread could be found, where the fishmonger would sell yesterday's catch at a discount. And she looked at me with eyes that held both suspicion and desperate hope. And she accepted. And that was the beginning of everything. The moment I set in motion my own destruction without knowing it. We became friends quickly, too quickly perhaps, with the intensity of people who have been lonely too long. And a leaner told me she had fled London to escape a marriage her family had arranged, had run with nothing but the clothes she wore and the coins she could steal. And she said she could never go back. That returning meant becoming property, meant losing the small freedom she had claimed. And I believed her because I wanted to believe her. Because her story resonated with my own understanding that sometimes running is the only option. That sometimes survival requires leaving everything behind. And I offered her a place to stay, let her sleep in my small cottage, shared my food and my fire, and slowly, carefully my secrets. It was 3 months before I told her what I was. 3 months of building trust, of learning each other's rhythms, of growing from friends into something more complicated. Something that involved hands held in the dark and kisses stolen when no one could see. And I had never loved anyone before Alina. Had never let anyone close enough to risk it. But she made me want to risk it. Made me believe that perhaps I did not have to live my entire life alone. That perhaps trust was possible. And when I finally told her I was a witch, told her about the magic I practiced, and the healing I did, and the knowledge I carried, she looked at me with something that seemed like awe, seemed like acceptance. And she said she had suspected, said she had seen signs, said she was not afraid because she understood that power was not inherently evil. And she asked me to teach her. And I, fool that I was, agreed. I showed her how to identify healing herbs, how to make tinctures and salves, how to speak to growing things and ask them to lend their strength. And she learned quickly, too quickly, with an eagerness that should have warned me, but instead flattered me, made me feel important, made me feel that I was building something that would outlast me. And I taught her things I should have kept secret. Taught her about the grimoire my grandmother had left me. About the more complex workings that required not just herbs but intention and will. About the ways magic could be shaped and directed. And Alina absorbed it all. Asked questions that seemed innocent but were actually quite specific. And I answered because I trusted her. Because I believed she was learning from genuine interest, rather than calculation. The witch trials intensified that winter. Intensified because a new magistrate had arrived. A man named Ashford, who had built his reputation in London by prosecuting witches with zealous efficiency. And he brought with him methods refined through years of turning suspicion into conviction. And suddenly, the town that had been content to whisper about witches was actively hunting them, was offering rewards for accusations, was creating an atmosphere where denouncing your neighbor became profitable. And I felt the fear spreading, felt the way people looked at each other differently, with new suspicion, new calculation. And I told Alina we needed to be more careful, needed to stop practicing entirely until the danger passed. And she agreed, said of course, said she understood. And I believed her because I wanted to believe her, because the alternative was too painful to consider. The summons came on a morning when frost painted the windows white, and my breath misted in the cold air of my cottage. Came in the form of the bailiff and 2 constables, and they said I was accused of witchcraft, of using demonic power to harm Christians, of keeping a grimoire and teaching others the dark arts. And I felt the world tilt because I had been so careful, had told no one except Alina. And I looked at the bailiff's face and I asked who had accused me. And he said that was not his concern, that I would learn everything at the trial, and they took me from my cottage, while Alina watched from the doorway with her hand pressed to her mouth and her eyes wide. And I looked at her as they dragged me past, and I saw something in her expression that made my blood run cold. Saw guilt, yes, but saw too a kind of relief. A satisfaction that she tried to hide. And I understood in that moment. Understood with devastating clarity that she had done this. That everything we had built had been a lie. That she had befriended me and loved me. And learned from me specifically. So she could destroy me when it became useful. The trial was held 2 days later in the hall where the magistrate conducted his proceedings, and they brought witnesses who testified about suspicious activities, about herbs gathered at midnight, about strange words spoken over sick animals, and every detail
They mentioned was something I had told Eleanor in confidence. Every accusation was built from knowledge only she possessed, and I searched the crowd for her face, but she was not there, had not come to witness what she had set in motion. And I realized that was calculated too, that she was protecting herself by remaining invisible, by letting others deliver the testimony she had provided, while she stayed safely distant. Magistrate Ashford was methodical, asked questions designed to trap rather than illuminate, and he produced evidence, produced my grandmother's grimoire, which had been stolen from my cottage, which could only have been taken by someone with access, someone I trusted, and he opened it to pages marked with slips of paper, pages that described workings I had explained to Eleanor, and he asked if I recognized the book, if I had used it, if I had taught others from it, and I could not deny it because the evidence was irrefutable, was my own grandmother's handwriting, was knowledge I had shared thinking it would be kept safe. And I understood that Eleanor had not just denounced me, but had built a case against me, had gathered evidence methodically, had planned this carefully rather than acting from sudden fear. I asked to face my accuser, asked by what right I was condemned on testimony I could not examine, and Magistrate Ashford said the accuser's identity would be protected, that revealing it would place them in danger, that the court had determined the testimony was credible, and that was sufficient. And I saw how perfectly she had arranged it, how she had used the system's own protections to shield herself while destroying me. And I felt rage alongside the fear, felt fury at the betrayal that was almost worse than the knowledge that I would likely burn. They questioned me for hours, asked about rituals and sabbats and pacts with demons, and I denied everything except the healing, admitted only to helping people because that seemed innocent enough, seemed like something they might forgive. But Magistrate Ashford said that even healing could be devil's work, that Satan often disguised his marks as gifts, that I had clearly been corrupted whether I realized it or not. And he asked about Eleanor, asked if I had corrupted her, if I had tried to draw her into darkness. And I understood then why she had denounced me, understood that she had been protecting herself from exactly this question, from the possibility that association with me would mark her as well. And she had solved that problem by becoming my accuser rather than my accomplice, by positioning herself as potential victim rather than willing student. I was found guilty before the sun set, guilty of witchcraft and devil worship and attempted corruption of innocence, and they sentenced me to burn in 3 days, to be taken to the town square and bound to the stake and purified by fire. And as they led me to the cell where I would wait for execution, I finally saw her, saw Eleanor standing in the crowd outside the hall, and our eyes met for just a moment. And I saw in her face not triumph or satisfaction, but a complex mixture of guilt and necessity, saw that she had not done this from cruelty but from fear, from the calculation that, in a world where accusation protected you from being accused, it was better to be the one speaking than the one spoken about. And I hated her and pitied her in equal measure, hated her for choosing survival over love, pitied her because that choice would haunt her even if she never admitted it. The night before my execution, Alina came to my cell, came when the guards were drunk and inattentive, and she stood outside the bars and she told me she was sorry, said she had not wanted to do it, said she had been questioned, had been suspected, had been given a choice between denouncing me or being denounced herself, and she said she had chosen to survive, had chosen herself over me, and she seemed to want forgiveness, seemed to think that explaining her reasoning would make it acceptable. And I looked at her through iron bars, and I said nothing because there was nothing to say, because I understood exactly why she had done it, understood that in her position I might have done the same, and this understanding was worse than simple betrayal, was the knowledge that love was not strong enough to withstand fear, that when survival demanded sacrifice, she had chosen correctly even if that choice destroyed everything we had been. She asked what I would do, asked if I had a plan to escape, and I said I did not, said I had accepted what was coming, and she wept then, wept and said she wished things could have been different, and I told her they could have been different if she had been braver, if she had valued what we had more than she valued her own safety. And she said I did not understand how afraid she had been, how trapped she had felt, and I said I understood perfectly, said I was the one who would burn for her freedom, that I was paying the price of her survival with my life. And she left then, left crying, and I never saw her again. And I was glad because seeing her made everything worse, made the betrayal fresh, made me feel things I did not want to feel when I needed to be numb. The morning came and they took me to the square where the pyre waited, and the crowd was large, was hundreds of people come to watch me burn. And I scanned their faces one last time looking for Alina, needing to see her, needing her to witness what her choice had cost, but she was not there, had chosen to be absent, had chosen not to carry even the burden of watching, and this final cowardice was somehow worse than all the rest, was proof that she had not loved me enough even to see it through, had loved only herself, and I had been convenient until I became inconvenient. They bound me to the stake and the minister read scripture and asked if I would confess, and I said nothing because what was there to confess? I had done what I was accused of, had practiced magic and taught others, and the only lie in the accusations was that any of it was evil, that any of it deserved this, and I would not give them the satisfaction of repentance when I had nothing to repent. They lit the kindling, and I felt the heat building, and I closed my eyes and I thought about Alina, about the girl I had loved who had traded my name for safety, and I felt the power inside me wake, felt it respond to the fire with fire of its own, and I spoke words I had never spoken, words my grandmother had written in the grimoire but warned were dangerous, words that called on the old powers that cared nothing for human justice. And I felt something answer, felt magic surge through me stronger than I had ever channeled. And the ropes binding me burned through not from the pyre, but from heat that came from me. And I fell forward through flames that would not touch me, fell onto cobblestones while the crowd screamed and ran. And I stood smoking and burned but alive, impossibly alive. And I ran through the panicking crowd toward the forest that had always sheltered those like me. And I heard pursuit, but I did not stop, did not look back, ran until I reached the trees and the old magic that lived there recognized me as kin and hid me from those who hunted. I survived through power and luck, and the fact that fear scattered my pursuers. And I learned to live in the deep places where the old magic still held strong. And I practiced what I had been condemned for. Practiced it openly because there was no one left to hide from, no one left to protect. And Alina lived her life in the town, lived it safely, lived it with the knowledge that her survival had cost my life, or at least the life I had known. And I have wondered over the years if she thinks of me, if she regrets her choice, if she ever loved me at all, or if I was simply useful until I became dangerous. And I do not have answers, can only carry the questions alongside everything else I carry, can only acknowledge that she taught me the final lesson about trust, which is that it should never be given completely, that even those we love are capable of choosing themselves over us when choosing becomes necessary. This is my confession, whispered to the darkness that shelters me, and I tell it not for revenge, because revenge would require me to care about her fate, and I have moved beyond caring. Not for forgiveness, because there is no one to forgive, but because silence is what she wanted. Silence is what would make her choice easier to live with. And I refused to grant her that comfort, refused to let what she did remain unspoken, refused to pretend that love makes betrayal impossible when love makes betrayal worse, makes it cut deeper, makes it leave scars that never heal. And perhaps in the speaking, I can acknowledge that I was not destroyed completely, that some part of me survived her betrayal and the fire both, that I am still here practicing what I was condemned for, that her choice to survive at my expense did not grant her the victory she sought, because I survived too, survived to tell this story, survived to warn others that the person you trust most is the person who can hurt you most, that love is not safety, that sharing secrets is always dangerous, but sharing them with someone you love is the most dangerous thing of all. Stay if you wish in these shadows where old warnings breathe, where the night is long and full of voices that speak of betrayal dressed as love, of the terrible arithmetic that makes people choose survival over loyalty. And perhaps in the listening you will understand that some secrets should die with us, that trust is a gift too precious to give freely, that the person who holds you in the dark may be the same person who speaks your name in court,